to go? Everyone hear me okay? Yeah, good thumbs up, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. For those that haven't met, my name's Guy Adams. I'm the CTO and co-founder of DataOps.live. And today I'm going to be trying to cover a number of things at once, all under the banner of making your data AI ready. But as part of that, we're actually announcing at the show today the launch of the new Momentum capability within the DataOps.live family suite. And what I'm going to take you through today is the challenges we've seen over the last year, the challenges our customers have had, and how we have gone about addressing that with our new capability. So just a little bit of background about us. We've been around for 5 years now. We are mostly operate in the Snowflake ecosystem. We're a very close Snowflake partner, but we're very much regarded as thought leaders in the space of DataOps and more recently data products, where, in fact, in both cases where we have literally written the book on the topic. We work with a wide range of organizations, both here in Europe and in the US. Eutelsat, who presented on our behalf this morning, and AstraZeneca, who was here on the stage with me yesterday. But also organizations like AT&T, Disney, and in fact Snowflake themselves are a major customer of ours. So all of these are organizations who have embraced industrialized data ops and data products as a really core part of what they do. We are very well recognized across the whole analyst suite. Gartner recognizes us as a reference implementation for DataOps platform. And perhaps the one that we're most proud of earlier on this year, ISG did by far and away the most comprehensive report on the DataOps space. They looked at 48 different vendors across a whole range of categories, and the submission was about 100 pages, and we came out on top by a good 6 points clear of the next player in terms of DataOps capabilities. And as a relatively small UK-based company, beating out the likes of IBM and AWS and Microsoft is a pretty good achievement. So we're very proud of that, and we're looking forward to the updated ISG report that comes out at the end of this year. So that's a little bit about us. As a CTO, one of my jobs is to look across the industry and try and pick out the individual trends. It's such a big industry, there's so much stuff going on, we can't run after every little thing that someone talks about. Part of my job is to look at the trends and say, what are the next big things that our customers are struggling with, or going to be struggling with, and how can we help address those? And one of the things that can't have escaped any of your visibility, and you don't need to read all of these, but I'll read out some of the numbers. Failed AI projects, 70 to 80%, 80%, 85%, 85%, 63%, 70%. Rather famously, MIT came out with one recently, I think it said 95%, although that was somewhat debunked a little bit. But the point is that a very high percentage of AI projects are failing. And if you look at the reasons they're failing, poor data quality, data issues, poor data quality, data's not AI ready, issues with data quality, issues with data quality. So there is a very strong trend here that is saying AI projects are failing, not because of lack of AI capabilities, not because of lack of expertise, not because of lack of corporate buy-in, but the data that people are trying to use, which they may have been using for a long time, they may have been very successfully doing BI and analytics on it, is simply not AI ready. And we're seeing across pretty much all verticals, this huge push towards saying the data that I've been using in the past that may have been perfectly adequate for BI reporting is simply not up to scratch for AI. So you can summarize that whole big wordy slide with a pretty simple equation. Mediocre data gives failed AI outcomes. Or, as we're saying, good enough data is not AI ready. Data that was good enough last year, even last month, is not good enough going forwards. You absolutely have to, if you don't want to be part of those statistics, you absolutely have to up your game. So we started looking a little bit more about this topic of AI data, and we looked across a range of organizations, customers, prospects, and other organizations we work with. And the problem is organizations exist on a massive spectrum, from what on earth is AI-ready data, through to, okay, I have a basic understanding, but how would I get there? Through to, okay, I get it, but I'm absolutely swamped, there's no way I've got time to spend on this. All the way through to people, and there are people out there that are saying, you know what, my data is perfect, my data is absolutely AI ready today. Each of those organizations has a different challenge, or each type of organization has a different challenge. So if you're at the bottom end of the scale, your challenge is a basic understanding of scope. What is it that I'm trying to achieve? What does this basically mean? If you're a little bit further up, you'll now say, okay, well, I get the basics, but now I need something specific to actually action against. I need a set of things to follow, a set of rules, a process. If you're a bit further up, you say, okay, well, I get it, but I don't have the time. These are people who need massive amounts of help, automation, and continuous improvement to free them up from what they're currently doing to allow them to spend some time on this. And even if you are in the top 1% of organizations who genuinely have AI-ready data today, how do you prove that to anybody? That's your opinion. You say your data is AI-ready. Do your business users agree? Does your boss agree? Can you prove that? And as we looked at this, and we looked at this problem, we had a small epiphany. Because we can help address at every point in that spectrum with one simple capability. It's not often you get to address such a wide range of use cases and organizations with one capability. And it was automated AI-ready scoring. If I can point this to any of my data products and get automated AI scoring, at the most basic, it will say, hey, these are the various categories we're scoring against. This gets you a basic understanding. If you are a little bit further up, it will give you the individual measurements and where you're scoring well and where you need to spend your time on. And right up at the top end, if you are genuinely doing as well as you think you're doing, it's going to give you a fantastic empirical score that you can go to your boss, you can go to your business users and say, yeah, 95%. Proven. So this was our first epiphany, and we started doing a lot of work on this. Scoring is not a new concept, by the way. Scoring as a principle has been around for a very long time. I love a good quote. Peter Drucker in particular, my favorite one here, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. I think it's one of the things the data world has been historically very bad at is accepting that, you know what, we don't get it right day one. We put all this time and effort and we try and do all this stuff to make our data input perfect on the first day, and it's never going to be. We've been very slow to employ what most of the rest of the world, certainly my background in the software world does, which say, you know what, we'll get something good enough out there day one, and then we will go through a process of continual improvement. And that continual improvement cycle is very often missing in the data world. But that continual improvement very much starts with, we've got to be able to measure something. So if we can do our measurement and scoring, we can implement this continual improvement, and these shouldn't be cycles that we're measuring in months or years. These should be cycles we're measuring in weeks or days. So as we went through this and we were talking to customers about it, one of the big complexities people got is like, okay, well, we get that we're measuring, but what are we measuring? What is the noun? What is the thing that we're attributing the score to? Is it a table? Is it a view? And people really struggled. And we took a little bit of time to think about this, and we had our second epiphany. And it's not the data warehouse. That's far too broad. You can't measure on something that scale. It's not the table or the view. That's far too narrow. The base unit of measure for all of this must be the data product. This is the wrapper. This is the defined unit that the business is using, that we as data engineers are using, and how we're communicating. The first unit of management, the primary unit of management, is the data product, and that's the thing that we need to score against. So that was our second piece. Okay, so we need automated AI scoring. We're going to do it on a data product level. And then the third problem, and to be honest, this was when we did this, we got huge amounts of enthusiasm from people until we got to the point of saying, okay, so you're going to do it? And like, no. Far too busy for that. We get it, and we want it, and we hope that we'll get there one day, but we're far, far, far too busy to be doing any of this today. And that was by far and away the biggest stumbling block and hurdle. Wasn't understanding, wasn't principles, it was this time issue. So the third epiphany and the final epiphany was there is no way we're going to be able to help people do this unless we can dig them out from A, some of the workload that they're under at the moment, and B, make this scoring thing really, really, really easy. And what I mean by that, when I go into the most advanced customers that we have today and we talk about scoring, they show me Excel spreadsheets. They show me Excel spreadsheets with 100, 150 rows that have to be filled in by hand. Like that, you are never going to get any meaningful amount of scoring, repeater scoring, if you're doing it that way. So the third epiphany here was that we absolutely had to drive this using AI. And part of the release of our Momentum platform is our AI agent called Metis. Metis, by the way, is the god of wise counsel. Or goddess, I should say, of wise counsel. And what Metis does, and Metis is a true AI agent. I'm going to get my little rant out the way here. I did my walk around yesterday afternoon. Every big day to London, I walk around and work out what is the the buzzword of the year that people are slapping on all of their branding. This year, it's no surprise, it's AI agent. I spoke to an analyst who's been walking around who's actually talking to people. He said 95% of the AI agents that he has seen are not agents at all. They're glorified co-pilots on top of documentation. An AI agent is something you can give a problem to and say, come back when it's done. Your problem, not mine. So when we talk about an agent here, we mean a true agent. And I'll give some demos and some examples of that agent in practice in a minute, actually what it does. So this does two things for us. First of all, it frees people up from the current workload. As you'll see when I go through building some data products in a minute, Metis is taking the workload to build a brand new data product down to single-digit number of minutes for a human being. For most organizations, that's weeks and months. So just on that basis alone, we're freeing people up massively from the current workload to start being able to do some of these more advanced things. Metis also, because it's natural language, dramatically reduces the barrier for less technical people, particularly business users, to start doing self-service. And how many organizations can a finance user build their own data product subject to all of the IT requirements and governance and federated governance and all those guardrails? So within what IT is laid down, in how many organizations can a finance user or a supply chain analyst actually build their own data products? And that's what Metis enables. But also on the scoring side, we don't want to bring in a scoring system which says, okay, we're going to take away one laborious manual job and replace it with another one. We want to take away a bunch of laborious manual stuff, and we also want you to think about scoring, but we want to do the heavy lifting for you. And when we think about scoring is actually the beginning of the process, not the end. I think the most important thing that we did here was say, once we've done scoring, great, so I get 15 out of 50. What does that mean? Well, it means I need to improve. Great, what do I do? A scoring system without a contextual recommendation system isn't worth very much. So the three critical things that we get out of Metis is our scores, our recommendations, and all of those recommendations are actionable by Metis itself. So you genuinely get to the point where on a Monday morning you open up your data product, Metis has got, here are the top 5 recommendations to improve your data product. You click, do that one for me, do that one for me, do that one for me. You come back after your cup of coffee, the agent's got done, done, done. Check the results, are you happy with it? Go live. So if we want true automation, it's not just automation of the scoring, it's automatic production of the recommendations, and then ultimately it's applying those recommendations for us. And I'm now going to give you a couple of examples of our Metis engine actually in practice. So I'm hoping, by the way, this is my 6th year presenting at Big Data London, and it was the 6th time I optimistically thought this year the Wi-Fi is not going to let me down. And I bottled it yesterday and I put videos in instead because the Wi-Fi has been catastrophic. So this is a data product directory. A business user has gone in to look for some combined sales data, online plus in-store. There isn't one, so they have gone to the, they've clicked on the create. So I'm going to pause this so I can narrate it properly. So it said, okay, create me a new data product. Is this pause not working? Sorry, this is skipping between videos, and apologies. Let's try that again. Okay, so as a business user, all I'm doing here is saying I want to create a new data product, and I've given it the most cursory of descriptions. Combine online sales data and in-store or mail order data, sorry. There are some examples of other data products that it could generate for me. Every part of this is contextual, so it knows what data products our organization already has that I have access to. So when it's suggesting me things, these aren't things made up from nowhere. These are things it's suggesting, saying, I know what data you have, this is what you could do with it. But in this case, I know what I want to do with it. I've asked it to create me a new data product. Now, generally speaking, a 4 or 5 word prompt isn't necessarily that useful, so we have an automated enhance button. That's going to suggest us a more sophisticated version of this prompt. And it's going to give us a chance to go through and make any changes to it. It's going to fill in a few more details. But say, okay, this all looks good, this describes what I want, and I'm going to click continue. From a user perspective, I'm done. That's it. Now it's over to the agent, it's over to Metis. So the first thing it's going to do is identify the data sources required to meet my need. Again, it knows all of the data products I have, knows what information is required for that. I could go in and override this if I've got specific information I want to include, but it's worked those out. It's now going away and building a complete data product from scratch. And by complete, I mean ingesting that or bringing in that source data, transforming it, building all of the logical models, materializing that, building the unit test, building the CI/CD pipelines, inheriting my governance requirements and checking all those are being met, integrating with my data catalog. When we say done here, we mean done. We mean, if you press one more button, this is in production. So once I'm happy with it and I review the setup, this is now actually doing that deployment. This is now deploying it. It'll deploy in a sandbox environment first, because it's AI, we always want to check what it's done, no matter how confident we are. But this has now given me, inside my data product directory, a data product I didn't have before. Now, yes, I sped that up. I think that was about 8 minutes of real time that I sped up, because you don't want to sit there for 8 minutes. But the amount of human interaction was me typing in 7 or 8 words, clicking a few next, and I now have a brand new data product ready to go to production. The next piece is, okay, the chances of it doing exactly what I want first time out are relatively slim, but that's not the point. The point was just to build us something that's a really good starting point. Now we use metas again in this edit. This is this iteration flow. So I'm viewing my data product, I switch from my read mode to my edit mode. This is starting up the metas agent behind the scenes. This is now an instance of the agent for this one data product. So this agent now understands everything there is to know about this data product, and now I can start asking it anything I like. I can make structural changes. I can say bring in new data. I can give it very specific things, like I want to guarantee that all values in this column look like this. Or I can give it very broad instructions, like I just want better data quality checks. It will take all of those in. In some cases, it will ask me some follow-up information. I say, hey, you haven't given me quite enough for me to have a good crack at this yet. That's fine. We might have a little bit of a backwards and forwards of dialogue first, but once it's happy, it will go away. It will build that change. So in this change, in this cycle, first of all, I asked it to bring in some new information I didn't have, like the reason for the return, why the return was being processed. Then I asked it to do a sentiment analysis of that, which it's added, but it's in a floating point form, which isn't very useful to people. Finally, I'm going to go in and say, okay, take that floating point number and just bucket it from terrible to excellent. Yeah, what do people think of the product? They're returning it because it's an unwanted gift, or they're returning it because it fell apart when they opened the box. And now we have a return sentiment reason. Now, these are the sorts of things that historically required reasonably significant data engineering capabilities, but using metas, we're going to be able to do all of that using natural language. There's nothing that I've done here that most business users, a finance user, a logistics or supply chain user couldn't do themselves. So we've looked at 2 elements of metas. We've looked at the create capability and we've looked at the edit capability. Let's go back to our AI readiness scoring. Because ultimately, that AI capability, the biggest part of that was simply to free up our resources to focus on these more interesting things. If we look at the final, well, let's walk through one of these data products that's actually been fully built and processed. You saw a lot of tabs that we ignored across the top, and some of these are very specific related to scoring. So on our dashboard, on our overview here, we've got very basic information, high-level scores. Right now, our AI readiness score is 2.5, for example. We've seen the preview of that data. We've seen what metas can do with it. But we've also got a whole bunch of other scoring we do here. So most of you have worked with data products that come across fair scoring. Fair scoring we think is actually a little bit narrow, so we've extended it with things like quality, trust and security, ethics and compliance. So this is scoring the data product itself, the mechanics of the data product. There is significant overlap between that and the AI-ready scoring. But what you see here, I go back to it, is we've got those recommendations at the top. And I decided, okay, I want to implement this recommendation. I click it, I go into metas, I click go, and I'm now handing that task off to the AI agent. So go back to that process. We score automatically. We come up with the recommendations automatically. We push them into the agent. We have the agent do the heavy lifting for us. That is a recipe. If you do that on every data product once a week, that is a recipe for very, very, very high quality data products throughout an entire organization very quickly. And exactly the same applies in the AI-ready scoring. We've got, I think, over 220 now scoring measures that we use for AI-ready scoring that focus in two main areas. The first one is on the data itself, from a traditional perspective, but also from an AI perspective. But there's also a huge amount about the operationalize and the management of that data. Is it being managed correctly? Do you have change control and auditing and versioning and semantics and everything else that you need to make data really AI ready? And I'll be honest, even internally, when we put our own data products through this, we're not scoring great. Like a lot of this is not saying, how well are you doing? You should be getting 90%. A very big part of this is saying, look, none of us are doing great today. That's why so many of those projects are failing. This is not an issue. It's not something we should be ashamed of. It's simply acknowledging that if we want to get those, results, we've got to do a fair amount of work. And part of what we're doing is this is a maturity spectrum. So rather than running and saying, oh my God, I got 5% score, say, okay, well, at the moment, I'm aiming for an intermediate point. So maybe now I get a 50% score. And I'm going to work my way through up intermediate until I get to, hey, intermediate across the board, right. Now I'm going to move myself to an advanced. Now I'm going to move my whole organization expectations forwards, and now my scores are going to go down again because I've just raised the bar. I've leveled up, if you like. But that process for an organization of leveling up, most organizations will say, look, we are, somewhere on this maturity spectrum. We can't expect to get to expert, world-class in one step. We've got to do it piece by piece. That's what this whole scoring framework and this maturity framework allows you to do, is step by step, little changes, actionable recommendations, continual improvement, continual improvement, continual improvement. And it's amazing how much 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes a week spread across a few data products, how quickly they get really, really good. There's a bunch of other things that we haven't been able to talk about here in our Metis platform. We have a very advanced level column level lineage for our data products, but one of the unique things is a completely organizational wide column level lineage. Because we understand every data product, because we understand how they're put together, we can trace a field, a piece of PII information from where it was ingested, right the way through the data products that are upstream of me, the data products that I have worked on, that I've built, but also the people that are consuming my data products, the downstream data products. And that's a real gap today. If I'm responsible for PII data, and I share it with Fred, and Fred builds a data product on top of it, and Fred gives that to some people, I've lost visibility of it. I'm responsible for it, I'm accountable, but I have no idea what those people are doing with it. And the other really significant element about this, again, goes back to the Metis agent, is not all lineage is the same. Just saying that this column depends on this column, yeah, that's a flow of information, but it's not necessarily a flow of PII. If I'm taking an email address column and actually what I'm doing is an MD5 checksum, or just turning it into the domain, or just counting the number of characters in it, yes, I've got a flow of information, column to column to column, but I don't necessarily have a flow of PII. So the Metis agent looks at every single transform, essentially every single line in that huge organizational lineage and says, is this propagating PII information or not? Is this propagating sensitive information or not? Is this propagating, in the case of a pharmaceutical company, patient identifiable information, a very specific pharmaceutical thing. And so based on that, we can now say, yeah, this data product over here, it does start with and does use data that was originally PII. What's being produced here is actually not sensitive. It can be shared freely through the company. It can be shared externally. So all of these things come together, but the heart of this is really the AI scoring and this continual innovation process, and it's all underpinned by the Metis AI agent. I think then to wrap up, just to give you an idea of the range of places that Metis is now prevalent in our platform, it's obviously being used for standard things like all of our code creation, all our test case creation, but embedded governance controls. Am I following all of my corporate best practices? If not, should the data product actually publish? We've got customers now at the point of saying, we've got a 15-point checklist of information architecture requirements. If a data product does not meet those architecture requirements as defined by the enterprise, it will not publish. It will sit there in a pending state. Why is that important? Because in an organization of 1,000 data products, no one has enough information architecture to run around and check every single one. You can only do these things by managing by exception. So you define your enterprise policies, you push them down, this is the federated governance, and then you have Metis and the agents in the pipeline enforce all of those for you. All of the environment management, all of the way that we set up feature branch environments and manage development environments and QA, these are things that we've done for years, but smart pipeline orchestration. getting to the point now where you don't have to define what jobs you use in your pipeline. Metas can look at that and say, I know based on what you want to do, which jobs you need to run. Build me the pipeline automatically. Those days of writing Python code and YAML code to create your CI/CD pipelines are rapidly going away. And I think one of the highest value areas for AI is really around automated testing. And I say this confidently because I come from the software world, which is a little bit ahead of the data world, and that's where the generative AI first really cuts its teeth. Developers love writing code, developers hate writing tests. So the AI picks up the things that the developers hate the most and are least good at, and it's exactly the same with data. We've seen our AI agents produce far better testing frameworks and testing specifications than the human beings were ever doing. It's not that human beings couldn't do it, it's just couldn't be bothered to do it. There's more interesting things to be getting on with. And then the core of this is continuous observability, the AI-ready scoring, the fair scoring, the data quality reporting, the enterprise data lineage. All of these are dramatically enhanced by the use of our AI agent. And I talked about the quality gates, I talked about the regulatory gates. Is my data product not just meeting the data quality specifications, but is it meeting my own corporate requirements, best practices, information architecture requirements to allow it to go live? And with that, I'm just getting the wave that we are nearly out of time. So thank you very much for your time. I'll stay behind at the end if anyone's got any questions. Otherwise, please come and see us at booth M50. We're next to Snowflake, and we have a little mini theater there, and we have free coffee.